Okay, this one's called Old Mountain Remedies.
Is that where you live?
That's about like my place. I've got just a little cabin. I live in the mountains. It's on a knoll. But two more things that on cardiovascular. L-carnitine is something that's also used a lot to strengthen the heart muscle, and then also L-arginine is used. L-arginine and L-carnitine. Okay, Old Mountain Remedies. Testing. Is it on? Got it. So let's see here. It's really weird. Oh, there we go. There we go. These are some that we already covered this morning. Again, even when we look at the natural remedies, remember you still got to do the 8 laws of health. Those are so important. This is Appalachia. This is what my family would look like. Probably the same up in these mountains, this area. But the doctors are the grandmas, the grandpas, and that was the doctors who took care of us. Before them, you've got the Native Americans. And then, we'll just go here. You then go back to the Bible. You've got a fig for a boil. And figs are good for boils. Actually, as a fig poultice is good for boils. It's also very good for cancer. You can take a fig and you can cut it in half and put it on a cancer, or you can dig it out and make it fig poultice. And fig poultices are good for cancer. You probably learned that from Maimon. Yes, because I know he uses fig poultices. Yes. Isn't it amazing? Jesus used clay. I mean, he spit on the ground, spit in dirt, and put it on people's eyes. And then we got Job. What did they use? Ashes. What do we use charcoal poultice for? We use it for great for boils. Yeah. Remedies by diagnosis. I like wounds. This is a little simple wound here. This is the foot I talked about this morning. This guy's a diabetic, type 2 diabetes. He's got osteomyelitis, and they're about to amputate his foot. His physician called me and said, "Walt, can we save this foot?" And with God's help, I told her we can. And she's a good Christian lady. So anytime you do wound care, you've got to have good nutrition. Nutrition is critical to heal that area. So we juiced him. We put him on a juice fast, a vegetable juice fast. He has diabetic neuropathy. So we got to address the diabetes. So we addressed the diabetes through the juicing. We gave him Alimed, which is the allicin. We gave him a teaspoon twice a day because of the osteomyelitis, the infected bone is osteomyelitis. And then we did hydrotherapy. And people will say, "Walt, you can't do hydrotherapy on a wound like that." Why? Because it's too hot or too cold. Well, yes, it would be if it was too hot or too cold, but you can still do it. Don't go over 100, don't go below 70, and you're going to be fine. The tissue with neuropathy or some major wounds, you don't want to use hot because, one, they may not feel it. Two, they don't have adequate perfusion, and they can have tissue damage because there's not right perfusion of blood. And so you can have tissue damage. But 100 degrees, I haven't found to be a problem. And 70 degrees. So 3 minutes warm, 1 minute cool. 3 minutes warm, 1 minute cool. 7 times, twice a day. Then we sprayed it inside with Alimed, sprayed all that red meat with Alimed, but again, because of the osteomyelitis. Then we put a salve on there, and the salve was Goldenseal, 1 part Goldenseal, 1 part myrrh gum powder, 1 part frankincense powder. If you can, pine sap, 1 part. You can put bee propolis, 1 part, and then somewhere around 1.5 to 2 parts of aloe vera gel. You can use aloe vera juice or mix up your own aloe vera, make your own aloe vera gel, but the gel just works better, the consistency. Some people use slippery elm. I just don't like the texture. It doesn't work as well, so I left that slippery elm out. And you just paint it on. You want the consistency about like a little thicker than pancake batter. Pancake batter, somewhere around like pancake batter. Because you don't want it, you don't want to, remember how we used to do betadine and brown sugar? We'd stuff it full. Well, you don't want to do that. You just want to paint that tissue area with the herb because we're going to wash it off in 12 hours when we do another hydrotherapy treatment. And then we put a charcoal poultice because of the infection. Do that twice a day. But what do we do before we do it, before each treatment? We pray because we ask God to bless it, just like we asked God today before we ate dinner. We asked Him to bless the dinner. The same situation. That's in 2 weeks. We're starting to have some significant growth growing back. We're starting to see the heel starting to heal up. That is in 4 weeks. We're ready for a skin graft. Heel's totally healed up, and the flesh is totally filled in, and God blessed it. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? Never would that have happened when I worked in regular health care. And we did a lot of wound care. Yes?
My girlfriend married a podiatrist, and he shows me pictures way less than this, and he always amputates.
Isn't that amazing? I had a guy come in several years ago, and this fella had a real easy wound. I mean, it wasn't any bigger than the tip of my ring finger. Well, this is a ring, whatever. This finger right here, this forefinger. And it was easy. He'd gone to the VA, they couldn't heal it. He came to me, it wouldn't heal. We worked on it for a couple of weeks, it just would not heal. So I called a buddy of mine, a surgeon. We used to work together, and I said, what do you think? He goes, what are you doing? And I told him. He says, well, that's what I do. And he's thinking, he goes, does he smoke? I go, that's it. He smokes. Yeah, he goes, it ain't gonna heal because you've got vasoconstriction. Nicotine causes vasoconstriction. It doesn't allow adequate perfusion of blood to the area. Plus the rest that you're doing with affecting the oxygen and that type of thing. So I went back out to the man and I said, Mister, I'm sorry, I forgot you smoke. It ain't gonna heal. You gotta stop smoking. He goes, I'm not gonna quit smoking. I said, I can't help you anymore. Because obviously what I'm doing doesn't work without you smoking. We'll stop smoking. And he left and I never seen him again. Who'd want to lose a foot over smoking? I don't understand it. But yeah. So you want to clean the wound, hydrotherapy, the Goldenseal, the myrrh, the aloe vera, pine sap, pine oil, bee propolis. You can use honey. Honey's also really good. You can do a charcoal poultice, cabbage poultice. Got to stop the tobacco and have good nutrition. Got to have that good nutrition. Pine sap. Who's used pine sap? Pardon? Okay, it's good on cuts. What do y'all use on?
We're just planning on using it. We've heard so much.
Okay. Yeah, it's great on babies cutting teeth. All 5 of my grandkids used it for cutting teeth. It works really well. Yes, you can. About 21 years ago, I was teaching a class, and there was a little lady. She was back in the far corner back there. And as a room about like this was plumb full of people. And I was talking about pine sap, and she raised her hand, and she says, can I tell you something about pine sap? Well, you ain't too bright if you don't listen to folks with experience. And age has experience. And she says, I said, yes, ma'am. She says, well, back when I was a little girl in 1918, that's a little while ago, she says, my daddy was a nurse down in California, Southern Cal. And when he was going from house to house all day long, taking care of patients with the Spanish flu, he would take us with him inside. Well, that got my attention because that was extremely contagious. And she said when we got home at night, he would take a pine knot and put it over fire, and it would drip into a cup. And I said, well, how many drops? How much water? She goes, I don't know, I was a little girl. But she says, we never got the influenza.
You would take
a pine knot and cause it to drip.
A piece of wood with a knot.
Yes, exactly.
So the pitch comes out of it.
Yes.
And he did that by heating
By heating it every day. He would take a pine knot and do that. Then when I went back to Tennessee, women would come in, and I would teach them. People come in. I'd teach about different things, and these old women would say, "They're gone now. They passed away," and because they were mostly in their upper 80s, 90s, and they would come in. They'd say, "Let me tell you how to use pine sap." They said, "When we were little girls, our grandmothers or our mothers would take a piece of pine rosin, like rosin off a tree, about the size of a match head, and it didn't matter where they come from, whether they come from Grassy, where they came from Cosby, where they came from Dario. They would use the head of a match head as an expression of size, and we'd chew it on the way to school because they didn't have school buses, and they chew it, and they didn't get sick. So yes, you can use it internally on small amounts.
What about the pine sap that you see on the pine cone? 'Cause I picked that
That's
up.
it. That's it. And pine sap's expensive. The last gallon I bought was $3,000. Can you imagine? That's expensive, $3,000 for a gallon of pine sap, but it's extremely effective in healing wounds. But as we talked about before, you don't want to do it on a puncture wound because you can't.
Just rub some on your finger?
Just rub it. Just put it on. If you got it. It's expensive, so we want to be careful. It's also messy and sticky, and so you can take like the tip of a toothpick and kind of just drip it in there. Mary Lou was pulling some weeds out of the garden one time, and one was it cut her hand, just cut it plumb open in her hand. And so we went over to a friend of ours who's a physician, and he says, "Can I experiment on you?" I said, "Sure." He said, "I've done it before in the emergency room and it works." He carried some into work and didn't tell him what he's doing. He is an ER doc at the time. And he put pine sap in there, then he sutured it, and it healed much, much faster. He said it just increases the healing when you put the pine sap. And plus it kills pathogens. It's really good. But the tissue just heals a whole lot faster.
So we just watched a presentation by somebody else who was talking about using pine sap, and she said never to use it on dirty wounds.
Yes, you want to clean it first.
But I mean, she meant like an animal.
Oh.
Or that kind
Was it Barbara?
It's because of, a cat bit or something, and the pine sap, something about, because it was an animal bite, the pine sap sealed that stuff in there.
See, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just like a puncture wound. See, if an animal bite is a puncture wound, and so that makes sense. Or if it gets dirty down in there and you don't fully irrigate it, and it's still dirt, that's exactly right.
Sealed it in, yeah.
That's right, because it heals so fast. No, that's exactly true. Yes. Wounds, gum disease. I had this lady come to me one time. She was just squalling and just crying. And she said, I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I just left the dentist, and he said they're going to have to pull every tooth out of my head and put all new teeth in there. And it was going to cost $3,000 for the cheapest set of dentures he could find me." And she said, "I don't have $3,000. I said, "Well, let's try something. And let's pray." And so we prayed. And we used myrrh. We used Goldenseal. Well, Goldenseal, myrrh, and then we put pine sap on there. And it took, and we'll talk about it in just a minute, it took 6 weeks. But you know what? She still got her teeth now. And she'll come in and she'll go. She says they're watering like fish. She says, "Remember when we were kids and we'd eat a peanut butter sandwich in school and just one tooth was loose?" And she says, "Remember the pain from it?" I said, "Yes." She says, "Every tooth in my head's watering like that. And I can't eat anything. I can only do soup." And so that's what she'd do. And it took six weeks. She went back to the dentist and he couldn't believe it. Just couldn't believe it. And she still got her teeth now. And that was in 2005. Yeah, so it's been a while. Immune system, cutting teeth, pain. You can put it on the head. I've used it for headaches. cut it with some olive oil. It's not as sticky for that. Activated charcoal. That's what it looks like. See, 1 teaspoon of activated charcoal has as much surface area as a football field. See, can you see all the surface area? And so charcoal does not absorb. Charcoal adsorbs. So if I have a sponge and I go across some water, it's going to absorb it. But if I have a dry sponge and I go across some flour, I go across that flour, it's going to stick to it. That's adsorbed. Where the water is absorbed, clay absorbs, charcoal adsorbs. And so it just sticks to the outside. It's food poisoning. Nothing I found any better for food poisoning. Just take a heaping teaspoon, stir it in a glass of water, and drink it. It works very well for food poisoning, very rapidly. Indigestion, acid reflux, IBS, detox. We use it on a foot bath for gout. But the key is do not use it within 2 hours either side of a prescription or to soak up that prescription. I had a nurse call me one time. She said that she'd given the patient, read the MAR wrong. And you know what an MAR, medication administration record. And she gave the patient way too much morphine. And fortunately it's by mouth and not by IV. And she says, what do? I said, protocol. Use the charcoal. And she had no adverse effect. Soaked it right up. So if you take, say, blood pressure medicine, and if you use it within 2 hours either side of the blood pressure medicine, it's not going to work. It's just going to soak it up. I'm sure you've used charcoal before. You know they won't let us use it anymore. It's not even allowed to be on the ambulance anymore. They say it's a drug and that it's too dangerous for us to use. They're afraid of aspiration. And it's crazy. They're afraid of aspiration. They're afraid the patient's going to, pardon? Aspiration. They're afraid the patient will throw up and it then will get into the lungs.
Do you ever talk about aspirating charcoal for like COPD?
I've heard people using it.
We can talk about it and it seals up the little holes that air this.
Yeah. See, for years, just because you've been told don't do something doesn't mean don't do it. But sometimes it's good to listen. But always I have an ear. And anytime someone like Mayman talks, you want to listen. I have heard of using it. I've never used it though. But I have heard that it can be used. Yeah. You just have to be careful because it's so fine. You just don't want to go and breathe it in without knowing what you're doing. How much did Mayman use?
I don't know, he said you put it in a paper bag, shake it up, and then stick your head in there and breathe.
Huh.
I don't know how much, enough to fly around with the bag, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if he said it, I'd definitely put my ear and listen because he's definitely good. Yes.
COPD, because when you breathe, the COPD lungs, they kind of leaky. The air
Okay. And he says it clogs it up or stops it up?
off the charcoal,
Huh.
so that when you breathe, you're not losing air.
Yeah. I definitely know what I was doing because it can cause, and he does. You'd have to do it a certain way. Yeah. Charcoal poultices. Who's ever made a charcoal poultice? What'd you use? Charcoal and what? Flaxseed? What'd y'all use? Did you make a charcoal poultice? Okay. I didn't know if she did. Okay. Charcoal and castor oil. We used, first time we ever used it, I was out mowing the yard. I still work in regular health care. I run over some yaller jackets. Y'all have yellow jackets here? And I had 30-some stings. And I just started just shaking. And it's probably part of my current situation I talked about earlier. But I just started shaking. And uncontrollably. And merely put just wet charcoal on all of those spots. Worked fine. I quit shaking, went to sleep. And boom, I started shaking again. And she was trying to figure out what happened. As she assessed it, she noticed that now it was all dry. And she had put it on wet, so she rehydrated it, and I quit shaking again. Well, you can use just straight wet charcoal. The officer that's back home right now that's running the fire department while I'm not there, he, 2 years ago, I got a call. I was down at Station 2, and dispatches that call, EMS is at level 0, means ambulance isn't available, and patient is allergic to bees and got stung, and he's having, actually they said he was not breathing. It turned out he was having significant difficulty breathing. And so Walter started to grab his jump bag out of his truck, because it's a better jump bag than what we had in the fire truck. And then the dispatch called me. "Walt, where are you?" I said, "Station 2. She says, "Good, I was hoping you were there." She told me who it was, and he's very, very allergic to bee stings. And so we took Walter's truck instead of the fire truck, because his truck is faster. And we got there, and he was having difficulty breathing. He was having issues of level of consciousness. He was plumb going out, plumb coming back, fighting. He's a military, still in the military. He was in Middle East, several tours. And I mean, he was fighting the people. And then back out. Then he got stung twice. Once in the wrist, and once in the leg right here by a hornet. And hornets can be worse than bees. And at this time, I called in for where the ambulance was. They said at least 15 minutes out. They had gotten free from the hospital, at least 15 minutes out. I said, okay. So I told the lady, I said, and his skin was white as could be. I mean, white as a sheet of paper. His blood pressure, let's see, his pulse was 118, I believe. Yeah, 118. His BP was like 70 over 40 something. And so I told Walter, I said, you monitor the vitals. So he was on it like a hound dog. I mean, he was right on it and monitoring the vitals. And so I was monitoring him, and I think, you know, I wish I had some charcoal, but we can't have it anymore. And so I said to his wife, I said, I wish I had some activated charcoal. She says, I got some. I bought it from you 2 years ago. Go get it. And so all I did was they went and got it, and I poured it in my hand. Someone had a water bottle. I poured his water, I mixed it up, and then someone had some kind of paper towel or a napkin, because it was a family event going on. And I went and put it on the napkin. I put it here, did the same thing again, put it here. Within 2 minutes, his skin color was coming back to normal. His level of consciousness came back almost to normal, that quick, his level of consciousness. And Walter says, Dad, his vitals are coming back. And then he looked and he saw I had charcoal, and he knew what I had done, because he didn't even pay attention up to that point. He was just monitoring his vitals. And EMS gets there, and by now he's doing good. He says, I'm fine, I don't need to go to the hospital. I said, you need to go to the hospital. Let him check you out, because I know how sensitive he is. I didn't want him, having some challenges. And so let's at least be stable and come on home. You can die from that. And so he went ahead and got on the stretcher, and they took him in. About halfway to the hospital, and I told the crew what I'd done, and halfway to the hospital, the medic decided he didn't want to get yelled at by the ER doc by having all that black stuff on there. He's going to clean that mess up. And he did. And the guy told me, he said, within 1 minute, he said his lips went numb, and then he passed out. And so it's amazing. God gave us this simple treatment, and how effective it is. My daughter, Ashley, this is back before I even left regular health care. It's been 20-some years ago. And we were just learning this stuff. And she came up to me with this nasty wound on her leg. It was very hard, very hot, and red. And so I took her next door to my neighbor, who's an old retired doc. And I asked him, I said, Doc Mundy, what do you think this is? And he goes, he didn't even answer me. He says, Virginia, get me a charcoal poultice. And she kept it in the freezer. And she thawed it out with a microwave and put it on there. And he says, you come back tomorrow night. I said, what is it? He goes, oh, don't worry about it. You just come back tomorrow night. Because he knew if I knew what it was, I'd take her on to the work, and got checked out. So I went back the next night. The redness was gone. The hardness was gone. The heat was gone, and it looked a lot better. And he put another poultice on it. I said, what was it? He said, oh, it was just a recluse bite. A brown recluse bite. No scar. None. No scar at all. Healed it plumb up. Yes?
When I was in India, I had this great big spider in my room,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, I kept trying to get it, it kept getting away one night I woke up in the middle of the night and I was just itching everywhere. I'm like, there's something wrong, and I was a couple of bites on me, and I don't know if that was that spider or a different one. And I didn't think about putting charcoal on the bites, but I drank
Mhm.
charcoal,
Mhm.
and immediately the itching
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. God has natural remedies. Isn't it fun? It really is. It's fun. The most fun I ever had in healthcare for 20 years was I had a vent unit I opened in an area of Virginia that so many of our vent patients, we just gave up. We left the patients on the vent. And I really had a burden for these kids that were in their late teens and 20s that they were giving up on a ventilator, and from motor vehicle accidents, most of them. And so I asked my respiratory therapist, I said, you think we could get these folks off? And they said, sure. And so I asked nursing, and I said, you think we can take that on? And they said, sure, we can do that. Okay. So I asked our medical director, I said, you think we could do that? He goes, yeah, let's do it. And so we opened a vent unit for that purpose. And we'd have people come in from, I was in Virginia, so we'd have patients from all over Virginia, North Carolina, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C. And you know what? We were able to wean them off the ventilator. And that was just so cool. They've been put on it and just said, you'll be on that for the rest of your life. And it was just the aggressiveness.
What did you do to get them off the ventilator?
The staff were just a lot more aggressive at trying to wean them instead of just giving up. And they were able to do it. And that was just really exciting to me to see a kid who was supposed to be on a vent the rest of their life and now have their freedom, not have to have a ventilator. I mean, they're at home with a home unit, like a little life care unit is what they used to have back then. And to me, that was exciting. This is exciting, doing this kind of thing, helping people with what you see here. It's exciting to see God work. Charcoal, flaxseed, you can grind up oatmeal, you can grind up flaxseed, psyllium. I use psyllium seed powder now. It works the best. I learned that from a therapist that I had from Switzerland. He was a therapist from Switzerland. So I put 1 part charcoal, 1 part psyllium powder, and mix it thoroughly. This is key. Mix it thoroughly. And because if you don't, the psyllium will congeal and the powder just won't. The charcoal won't congeal. It's still a mess. So mix it. So you put it in the bowl. You got black charcoal. You got tan psyllium powder. You mix it till it's gray. There's no black and there's no tan. Just mix it. It's going to take you maybe a minute or two, and then pour in your water. Best pour it all in one. You don't want it to congeal fast, because once it congeals, you can't add any more water. So pour it all in there. 6 parts water. So 1 part, 6 parts water. 6 parts water. Depending on the psyllium you have and how it's ground, where you get it from, sometimes it's 5.5 parts water. You just have to play with what your product is. And then at first you think he's crazy. There's too much water. And after about 30, 40 seconds, it turns into a black ball. And then you mix it until that black ball is really good. So I mix it for about 2 minutes. And then you take a piece of saran wrap, dump it out on there, and take another piece of saran wrap, smash it down on there, and then roll it out like you would rolling out pie dough. Pardon?
Pie crust.
Yes, like pie crust. Yes, between wax paper, but you're just doing it between saran wrap. And you could use wax paper. Or you can use a Walmart bag, or you can use a Ziploc bag, whatever. Just smash it down. You smash it about 1/4 inch thick. And it will last out of the freezer, out of the refrigerator. I'll put it in the refrigerator. It'll last in the refrigerator about 5 to 7 days. What happens if nobody eats your bread? Starts molding, right? Why? Because you don't have preservatives in it. Well, the psyllium doesn't have preservatives in it. So it's going to start molding. And so it's going to last in the fridge about a week. So the cool thing is you can make one about this big. And let's say you're needing to work a certain area. And so let's say it's an eye infection. Put it on the ice. So you cut it out like you're making a cookie or a biscuit. Just cut it out a little larger than the affected size. And then take the rest of it, put that saran wrap back on it, roll it up, put it in the refrigerator. Then you put a piece of saran wrap on the outside of it, or wherever you're putting it, because it's got to stay moist. Charcoal does not adsorb unless it's moist. And so you want to keep that moisture there. So putting that plastic over the top of it keeps it moist. And change it every, well, it depends on what you have. If it's really something bad, you can change it every couple hours. But normally you change it twice a day. And then throw it away. On boils, who's ever had a boil? A boil. Who's ever had a boil? Anybody? Boils are painful, very painful. I had one when I was a kid, and I remember my dad holding me down and my mom lancing it. And it was hard, displaced the tissue really bad because of the hardness. But when you use a charcoal poultice on it, then it's not as painful. It's when it erupts. If you want it to erupt faster, put some tea tree oil on it first, and then it will come to a head faster. And then it's like Mount St. Helens, it just blows. And I mean, just this pus stuff just comes out and comes out. Well, when you have it on there, when it starts hurting again, that means it's adsorbed all it can. Take it off, throw it in the trash, put another one on there. And then within usually 15 minutes, the pain goes down significantly, the plum goes away. And then when it starts hurting again, take it off, put it, that means you pull out what you can. If you have an open wound, always put a barrier in between the open wound and your poultice, because you can tattoo, especially with these others. Psyllium is less prone to tattoo, but it still could tattoo. So put a wet paper towel. When I was in Venezuela, do you think they had paper towels in Venezuela? Do you think they had saran wrap in Venezuela? They were so strapped that when you went to the bathroom, they only allowed you to use 2 squares for whatever you went to the bathroom for. They just didn't have resources. And so they would take a sheet and put it in a sheet. And you can use a chuck. You know what a chuck is, a disposable pad. But they used a sheet and it would fold over. And then when they were done with it, they would clean it really good and reuse it over and over and over again, because they just didn't have the resource. Same in Africa, do the same thing. Mix well, add water, roll out between piece of plastic, 4.25 thick, store extra short term in the refrigerator. If you need it over a week, store it in a Ziploc baggie in the freezer, and it will last for years. If used over an open wound, put a barrier, wet paper towel, cloth in between, so it helps to prevent tattooing. I have seen people tattooed and have a permanent black spot because they used a charcoal poultice without a barrier. Infected wounds, stings, bites, inflammation. It's great for gout on an acute episode, pain, cancer. I went to Battle Creek and worked with a physician there who used it on breast cancer and lung cancer. Eye infections, dental infections. By using the psyllium, it turns out like silly putty. And so you can cut you out a little piece about the size of this little digit right here, this little finger, that part of the finger, and you can stick it in the mouth if you have a tooth infection, and you can put it in there like a piece of tobacco. You know those little pouches they have that put tobacco in? Just drop it down in there and put it against it, and then take it out and put a new one, and that will pull that infection right back. And that works really well, where the others are a little more wet, messy. And so before I learned the psyllium, I would take a piece of paper towel and get it wet and make like a little pouch, like a tobacco pouch, and stick it in there. Infections. Antibiotic resistance is among the CDC's top concerns. This is from the CDC. Upper respiratory infections account for 3/4 of all antibiotics prescribed by office-based physicians. Upper respiratory infections account for 3/4 of all antibiotics prescribed by office-based physicians. Antibiotics are often used inappropriately, according to the CDC. Look at this. More than 10 million, more than. Is it 20 million? Is it 100 million? Is it 1.1? We don't know. But more than 1 million courses, that's courses or prescriptions. More than 10 million courses of antibiotics are prescribed each year for viral conditions that do not benefit from antibiotics. Why do physicians give you an antibiotic for a virus? Because we ask them for it. Mama comes in, I got to have something for little Johnny. I want an antibiotic. But ma'am, I don't care. I need an antibiotic. You know what I'm saying? We demand it. What is the doctor going to give you? If you go into a doctor, and I want to say pay $35, that's no more. You know, to go into a specialist anymore, you're paying $500, $600. To go into your local doc, it can be a good $150. Just for him to walk in there and look at you. And if he doesn't give you anything, then what'd you get for your money? I need a prescription. You know, I'll come in here for you to give me a prescription because that's what people know is how you treat things, drugs. And so here he then writes an order for an antibiotic because the customer wants a prescription. It's not, you know, it's not a bacteria, it's a virus. That's what they're talking about there. According to Infectious Disease Society of America, the losing battle against deadly bacteria is a public health crisis. Infections. What do we use for infections? I like using Allison, Goldenseal. Who's ever heard? I don't know if it grows up here. Does yellow root grow up here? Yellow, Y-E-L-L-O-W. We call it yellow root, like yaller. No, it's not yellow dock, but it's yellow like yellow, the word yellow. It's like golden. It's like a Siamese twin to Goldenseal. It grows by the creek banks. It's a little stalk that grows. It's very, very effective. Y'all know what Goldenseal is. Goldenseal is very, very good. Goldenseal, vitamin C, olive leaf extract, colloidal silver, having good nutrition, managing stress, hydrotherapy. Hydrotherapy is good for infections. Charcoal poultice is good to put on infections. This is from the Institute of Health. Allicin, which comes from garlic. Allicin is an active ingredient of garlic that has antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, antiprotozoal activity. Allicin exhibits various biological properties like antimicrobial, anti-cancer. Isn't that interesting? Docs use it for cancer. Antioxidant, immunomodulatory, anti-inflammatory. So it's good for inflammation. Hypoglycemic and cardiovascular effects. It's good for heart function. Allicin. What happens is you take 2 parts of garlic, put it together, and it will make allicin. Watch the video that Jess is just finishing a new website for us. If some of y'all are looking for some of this information, you can go to themustardseed.us. Themustardseed.us. On the home page, Jess made that one for us. Click on the bottom of it, and she put a little square that you can click on that takes you to our YouTube channel. And there's all kinds of videos there, and you can watch more. We're putting more and more up there. We just sent in some more to get ready to go on there through Amazing Discoveries. Something else I was going to share there. Oh, so there's a new one that she just did, and that is going to be released. It's called Alimed. Oh, it's brand new. I don't remember, but it's Alimed.co, like company. Alimed.co, and that one will launch in about 2 weeks. And it's got a video in there on how allicin is made. It's got a video on how allicin is made. But she did it's called the Alimed store, and she did a real good job on that. Allicin, a natural OTC, over the counter. You don't have to have a prescription. So, do you think folks do y'all have, what are those folks called that are survivalists? what's it called? There's survivalist people out there. There's another word for them.
Doomsdayers?
But could be that, but there's another word. But anyway, they like this stuff. Preppers, that's it, preppers. Because you don't have to have a prescription. And I mean, it works better than vancomycin. It works better than Cipro. And you don't have to have a prescription. It's amazing stuff. We ship it to docs all over the United States. And they use it for, well, let me tell you a quick story. And this is why we do what we do. Bottom line, this is why we do what we do. All of us. It's what we do. What is God's mission? To save humanity. What is Jesus' mission? To save humanity. What is our mission? To point the sin-sick soul to Him. That is the mission. That, bottom line, that is our mission, to point people to Christ. And you say sin-sick souls, we're all sin-sick souls. And so it's to point humanity to Christ is our mission. So I'm working at I've got a big old, it's longer than that screen. It's probably from your boy saw it when he came over. From the cross over to the other side of the screen, herb cabinet. And I was working there, I was sitting by there one day helping a fella who had diabetes, he and his wife. He was out of California. And Mary comes over and she says, I need your help with this lady. And so I got up and went over there and I said, what's wrong? This lady, she's just a squalling. And I said, what's wrong? She said, I just left the doctor and my husband, his severity is 10 out of 10. Now I don't know what he used to measure it, but it's 10 out of 10. And he had, y'all know what MRSA is? Well, this was vancomycin resistant MRSA. So it means vancomycin didn't work. And he had nothing really else to do, and it was in his brain. And on the inside of his skull, she said. And not in the brain, it was on the inside of the skull. So I guess it's between the brain and the skull. It's where she was told it was. So she said, the doctor said there's nothing else except go in there and exploratory and cut his skull open and scrape all that out and whatever. I think because she was pressing him so much. Then she said, I just left CVS Pharmacy. And CVS Pharmacy said they don't have anything. And she said, they said, come see you. I said, okay. I said, well, I have something that's really strong, but I've never used it for that. Are you willing to try it? She says, I'll try anything. I want my husband to live. And I said, does your husband believe in God? And this is the story I was sharing with y'all. I said, does your husband believe in God? She goes, nope. I said, do you believe in God? She goes, nope. And I said, well, do you mind if Mary Lou and I pray that God will bless it? She says, I don't care. I want my husband to live. So, okay. So we prayed that God would bless the Alimed, which is Allison, to heal her husband's MRSA that was vancomycin resistant. And she left. She came back a week later. She said the doctor said it was now 4 of 10 in severity. A significant improvement. She left. Came back 1 week. Came back 2 weeks later, now a total of 3 weeks. All happy. I mean, she was happy. And she said, it's gone. They said, it is plumb gone. And then she says something very important. She says, my husband now believes in God. And she left. And I never saw her again. And this was 2006. Last year, or was it this year? No, it was this year. Maybe it was this year. I don't remember. Last year or this year. And around February, a lady comes in. And she says, this is the time I was by the word cabinet when she came in the first time. I was helping with somebody. This time I was actually working at that word cabinet, putting some things, herbs up. And this lady comes up to me and she says, my husband's trying to quit smoking. She said, can you recommend anything? I said, sure. 3/4 of a cup of lemon juice, 1/4 of a cup of honey, and 1/3 of a teaspoon of peppermint essential oil. Stir it up and take a nip anytime you get a hankering. Y'all know what a nip is? Y'all know what a hankering is? A nip is a small amount and a hankering is a desire for. So, okay. So she starts out the door, and I said, wait a minute, don't forget the most important part. She says, the peppermint? I said, no, prayer. And she said, you don't remember me, do you? I said, no, ma'am. So she walks back in, and I walk up to her, and she starts telling me the story. And I said, I remember you. And I said, I got questions for you. Same husband. Yeah? Is he still believing God? Oh, yes, he does. And then just this time, it's just, first time she says, my husband believes in God now. Matter of fact. Now, I mean, you could see, oh, yes, he does. I said, now I got a question I never got to ask you. Do you believe in God? She goes, oh, yes, I do. And she says, it all happened right here. And literally, she was standing right where she had stood the first time she come in. She says, it all happened right here. And I said, so what are y'all doing now? What are you doing about church and whatever? She says, oh, we're real involved in the Lincoln Baptist Church. She's gone. She didn't stay around. Never. I don't know. If God can do that, can he do more with them? Absolutely. That is why God gave us the medical missionary work. That is why he said, soon there will be no work done in ministerial lines but medical missionary work. That's why it says preachers are twice as effective as they know medical missionary work. It's why it says every member is to be a medical missionary. It's why it says every church is to have medical missionary work, because it is so effective. Because I didn't tell her I could heal her husband. I didn't tell her that the alley med would heal her husband. I told her it would only be God that did the healing. That's what we got to give credit to. And God's good. He is. If we just do what we're supposed to do. So allicin, it's a natural antibiotic, antiviral, antifungal, which does not require a prescription. MRSA, vancomycin resistant, viral infection, bacterial infections, lowers cholesterol, common cold, dysentery, E. coli, salmonella, heartburn, acid reflux, stomach, upset stomach. You can use, docs use it a lot for H. pylori. Y'all know what H. pylori, Heliobacter pylori, works good for H. pylori. It works for C. diff. It works for just a number of health issues that are bacterial, viral, fungal, parasitic, and it's just extremely strong. Yes? It does, yeah. I have a friend down in Chattanooga area. He's a hospitalist. Y'all know what a hospitalist is. Instead of all the docs going to the hospital now, there's a hospital has a hospitalist that works in the hospital and goes around and sees all the patients. Well, he's a hospitalist. And he called me. I'd sent him a study on how Allimed is curing COVID so well. Well, he called me a couple weeks ago on a Friday, all excited. And he says, Walt, I got to tell you something. He said, I had a guy come in who was, we were about to put him on the ventilator. And another guy who was almost there. And he said, he's in Cleveland area. And he said both families came to me and begged me not to put them on the ventilator because they're afraid they'd die. And he said, okay. He says, I'll help you. So he gave him 35,000 milligrams of vitamin C IV, and he told the families to bring them garlic and feed them a clove of garlic every waking hour. He said the guy that they were just getting ready to put on the ventilator, I mean that day, in 4 days, he was off all oxygen and they were about to discharge him. The guy that was almost there, he was discharged from the hospital in 3 days. Isn't that cool? So yes, yes ma'am. Oh, garlic is so powerful. It is super, super powerful. IBS, IBD, H. pylori, C. diff, diverticulitis, parasites, flu, so just all kinds of stuff. Immune system. Again, no sugar, get your sleep, and maximize stress. And I've been teaching this for a long time. Remember last night I told you if you don't do what you're supposed to do, it don't matter what you're doing, if you don't follow through, I guarantee you, if your boy turn the fuel off, no matter what else he was doing, the helicopter's going down. He's got to have fuel. Even though he did everything else right, you got to do everything you got to do. The same thing here. Sugar, sleep deprivation, stress is going to wipe it out. Vitamin D, good nutrition, exercise, universal precautions. Universal precautions, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. Garlic, allicin, podiarco, red clover, echinacea, goldenseal, elderberry, vitamin C, olive leaf extract, oil of oregano. Olive oil, who's taken oil of oregano? To me, I call it my 44 Magnum. It is amazing. If I feel like I'm starting to catch something, I will take 10 drops of that under my tongue. Now, don't take it 100%. Take it where it's mixed with 1 part oil of oregano and 3 parts olive oil. And then take up to 10 drops. You're going to think I'm trying to kill you. It's strong. Take it with water, put it in water. But you've got to catch it in the incipient stage. That's the very beginning stage. Because with a virus, if it gets its roots in you, it's got you. Even Tamiflu, they tell you it's not going to work after 48 hours. And so you've got to get it in the incipient stage. If it's still there in 2 hours later, I'll take it again, and it's gone. It normally is plumb gone. I've got one on my side of the bed. Mary Lou's got one on her side of the bed in case we wake up in the middle of the night and we feel like we're catching something. That way we don't have to wake each other up. I've got it in the vehicles. I got it on my desk. I've got it in my turnout coat for my fire coat, because that's where I'm one of the most susceptible, is if I'm working a late fire, if I'm working a night in a wreck late at night, and bad weather, whatever, then because of sleep deprivation, I could get sick. So I've got it in my turnout coat.
You saying oil of oregano?
Oil of oregano.
Don't you put it in steaming hot water with a bowl and put a tent over your head?
Nebulize it. You can nebulize Alimed. If you have, like I had double pneumonia, and you can put 1 ml in a nebulizer and nebulize that, say 3 times a day. That'll get the Alimed down in to kill the infection. Another thing you can nebulize that works real good, that I learned from both Dr. Agatha and another physician who was a surgeon, is if y'all know what albuterol is? Albuterol, it's a bronchial dilator. Well, you can take a nebulizer and put 4 drops of eucalyptus essential oil pure, nebulize that, and it works just like albuterol, and it works very well. But yes, nebulizing is good. A vapor, like what do they call those things? Yeah, what's it called that you put your essential oils in? It goes. Yeah, diffuser. That's it. Yes. But sometimes when you're using a nebulizer, like if you use the eucalyptus, you put distilled water in up to the line, and then you put your 4 drops in there. Well, a lot of the nebulizers today, it's electrolysis, and so if you don't have anything for the current to flow through, kind of like we talked about before with the flask and the distilled water, then pouring in the salt. If you it won't work because there's nothing for it to work. So you put in a couple pieces of salt, and boom, it'll start working. Olive leaf is another great one for the immune system. It's super powerful. Shingles. Anybody ever had shingles? It's extremely powerful. 800 milligrams of the olive leaf extract 3 times a day, and that will kill the virus normally. Usually shingles is exacerbated by stress. Take the B complex 100, 1 each meal, and then to dry up the shingles and help with the pain, take you a who knows what a castor oil pack is. You can take a piece of flannel or a white t-shirt, white because you don't want the dyes. Daub it down in some castor oil, warm the castor oil in a pot, squeeze it out but not plumb total, and then apply it to the affected area and put a piece of saran wrap over it so you don't mess up your clothes. Change that maybe every 12 hours. Well, I like every 11 hours and let it breathe for an hour, then put it back on. That will dry it up and help with the pain. Works extremely well. The neat thing about the castor oil pack is you're not absorbing or adsorbing. You're just bringing blood to the area. Also, like you're also a mustard plaster. You're not adsorbing or absorbing like you are with the clay and the charcoal. And so you can use them over and over, maybe 4 or 5 times. Boils, we talked about boils before. Usually boils are blood issues, something in the blood, or you can like have a sebaceous cyst, bang it on something, and it gets infected, and that can cause a boil. But if it's because the blood is not pure, something going on in the blood, you want to clean out the blood. Chaparral, excellent blood purifier. Tastes nasty, nasty. Burdock root, red clover, let's see here, calendula is a good blood purifier too, or calendula as highfalutin people say. Charcoal poultice, allicin, nutrition water. You want to clean that. Also, if you want to come to a head faster, what do we use? If we want to come faster before we put the charcoal on it, but if we want it to come to a head faster, what do we put on it? Remember? Tea tree essential oil, and that will bring it to a head faster. Insomnia. See if I can get that start working. When I first went back to Tennessee, probably the biggest area that we worked with the people was on stress. Stress was huge. Then we started working a lot with women's hormones. And female hormones are huge. It's a big issue. And then now the biggest thing I work with is insomnia. Insomnia it's not easy. Insomnia, it's different for everybody. You may take Benadryl and put you to sleep, and I take Benadryl and it doesn't do anything to me. On the pharmaceutical side. On the phytochemical side, the same thing. One thing may work for you, another thing works for you, and they don't. The other problem with it is it may work for a while and it quits working. Kind of like deodorant. People use deodorant and it quits working. They got to change deodorant brands. Same thing. So you've got to figure out what's going to work for that person, and then what's going to keep working. Insomnia. Well, did I talk about insomnia last night at all? Okay. National Geographic put out a book recently on insomnia. Harvard is talking about insomnia. Why are we talking about insomnia right now? COVID really messed with people in a lot of ways. Not that they got COVID, but they're staying at home all the time. And what they found is people are turning their bedrooms into their dining rooms, their libraries, their entertainment room, their family room. They just don't leave the bed. Their office. How many people work from their office? Their bedroom is their office. And the problem is the brain does not correlate, according to Harvard and according to National Geographic's research, it doesn't correlate with the bedroom for what the bedroom is meant for. Going to sleep. It's for sleeping. It's for changing your clothes. It's for relations between spouses. It's not meant as a dining room. It's not meant as a entertainment room. And so you're laying there and the brain goes, oh, well, this is also an entertainment room. You want to turn the TV on? No, the brain needs to know that's for certain things, that room. The bathroom's for certain things. That's not your dining room. Your kitchen's for certain things. Your dining room's for certain things. And so Harvard says you need to turn that bedroom for what that bedroom is meant for. And that will help with insomnia. The other is the room needs to be cool, not hot. They've actually come out with a new bed as an alarm. The bed gets warm and it wakes you up. You set it, a timer, The bed gets warm and it wakes the body up. Heat. The body does better in a cool environment to sleep than a hot environment to sleep. I remember as a boy we'd moved to Florida, and it's hot. We didn't have air conditioning back in the 60s. You know, at school didn't have air conditioners, the church didn't have air conditioning, the car didn't have air conditioning, you didn't have air conditioning in the house. And here you are there in Orlando trying to go to sleep in August, July, and you got this little oscillating fan. Every time it come across you, it's like a blowtorch, and it's hot, and you just don't sleep good in it. So you need a cool room. You need a neat room, not messy. People sleep better if the room is neat. You also find that they sleep better if there's no noise. Go to New York City. You lived in New York City. Is there noise at night? Yeah, when I go to New York City to talk, I have a hard time. You got sirens and hollering and yelling, and it's hard to sleep. Now, it is true at my house, I hear noise at night. My wife's, I don't care what the temperature is, she's got the window open, and she likes fresh air. So I hear the hoot owls, and I hear, you know, but it's a whole lot different than gunshots and sirens. If I hear a siren in where I am up on the mountain, that means I need to go somewhere. It needs to have not much light, if any light. Better yet, no light. What's one of the problems that we're having with noise today at night? Ding, ding. Yeah. See, I have to have it in my room because I may get phone calls. I might get calls, and I get calls on this thing, fire calls. We go into North Carolina, and the fire chief will call me and say, Walt, over in that area, and say, Walt, I need your help on I-40, or I need your help up in the National Forest looking for somebody. They're lost in the middle of the night. And so I have to have my phone. But because I work with Africa and I have WhatsApp, I need to figure out how to turn WhatsApp off at night, because they're 7 hours different than us. And so when you, let's say it starts dinging at 11 o'clock at night, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, they're communicating to each other. And I'm in a group that we do, it's a program called Lifestyle of Health that we started this, and we're doing it for 2 weeks. And so I get all kinds of dinging at night from Africa. Or someone's up in California and they're up later and they're sending you a message. Or some people don't go to sleep at night and they just send people messages at night. Well, that messes with your sleep. It'll wake you up. There are things that I found that can help. Magnesium can help a person. You ever seen Calm, C-A-L-M? Calm works. Pardon? No, it's a product. It's a brand of a magnesium product. Then there's one that's called Calm and Relax, and that's magnesium, but it also has chamomile and passion flower and a couple herbs in it that are good to help you fall asleep. Magnesium's good. A new one that I'm using, because things change with me too, it's called Tranquil Sleep. Tranquil Sleep. It's got L-theanine, and these can work by themselves. L-theanine's amino acid. It has 5-HTP, and it has melatonin, 3 milligrams of melatonin. And it's got 2 chewable tablets. I have folks that just use one, it puts them right to sleep. Some people it takes 2. Some people will use CBD oil. And at first, it took 5 years before I'd use CBD for 2 reasons. One, is illegal in the state of Tennessee. 2, I was afraid someone would get high on it. And I had a buddy of mine, he was a physician up in Pennsylvania, and he said, this stuff's good. All the benefits of it. And finally, after 5 years of him keep telling me I ought to be using it, I said, Joel, does it make them high or stoned? He goes, no, it doesn't. They make CBD oil that does not have any THC. They make some that has less than 3%. And CBD oil can help with falling asleep. They make a CBD product that's from corn. I didn't know it came from corn, but you can get CBD not only from hemp, but also from corn. And there are people who find it helps them fall asleep, either a gummy or a oil, the CBD oil. Then there's the herbs: valerian, skullcap, hops. Pardon? Bitter for you? You know, the old timers would take and make a hops pillow. And it was a second pillow that would fit under their pillowcase on top of their pillow, and breathing it would help them fall asleep. Lavender, some people will make a lavender, especially ladies. Y'all like the smell of lavender better than we do. And they would breathe that lavender, and it would help them fall asleep. Some people will put it in a diffuser, and it will help them. That's the word I was looking for, diffuser. And that will help them fall asleep. Essential oil. Skullcap. So valerian, skullcap, hops, passion flower, chamomile, wild lettuce. Who's heard of wild lettuce? Does it grow here? Excellent for pain. It's the best thing I found for pain is wild lettuce. Take a quart of water, bring it to a boil, plumb turn it off, and add a cup of wild lettuce and a cup of skullcap. Skullcap's a nervine. And you then make it an infusion, not a decoction, but an infusion. That's where you just let it, where it's not simmering but steeping, where you plumb turn it off and let it sit for 30 minutes. You can let it sit overnight if you want. And then strain it and drink 1 cup every 2 hours. If it works, go to 3 hours. If it works, use least dosing. But that works extremely well for pain. So does California dogwood, and so does Jamaican dogwood, and California poppy. California poppy. Those, be careful on the California poppy. It will throw a drug test, just like eating hot dog buns with poppy seeds. That's going to throw a drug test. The wild lettuce, I was doing some teaching for several years for the U.S. Marshals, and I told them about the wild lettuce, and they said, well, do 3 days on it, and we want to test you. And they tested me, and it didn't show up, so it's not enough in it for the normal drug test. Let's see here. Let's look and see what else I have up here. Valerian, hops, skullcap, passion flower. There's one that's by Nature's Answer. Nature's Answer, and it's an extract, and it's got the valerian, skullcap, hops, and passion flower. And you take 2 dropperfuls, and that can help you fall asleep. Magnesium oil. Yeah, I forgot about that. Magnesium oil. I can rub magnesium oil on the bottom of my feet, and I'll fall asleep. Transdermally goes in. Chamomile. If you eat a big supper can affect the conversion of the serotonin to melatonin that we talked about before, and that can affect. Plus, a big supper can putrefy and ferment, and it turns into poison, and that can affect sleep during the night. Tryptophan, very similar to the 5-HTP. B complex can calm a person down. Sunshine. What else was I thinking there? Now this works. It's worked for everyone that I've ever had problems with them sleeping. Right after 9/11, our patients coming out of New York City and out of Washington, D.C., they couldn't sleep. So we tried all these different herbs and nothing would work. And so I called Dr. Strachan, Dr. Walter Strachan, who's from Loma Linda, psychiatrist. And I said, Dr. Strachan, what do you recommend? He said 2 tablespoons of valerian powder, 2 tablespoons of skullcap powder, and 2 tablespoons of hops powder. and 2 cups of water, make an infusion, and drink it before going to bed. Okay, so I put all our patients on that. Yeah. And it didn't work. So I called him the next day and I said, Dr. Strachan, it didn't work. He said, it's always worked for me. Always worked. He said, you get a lady whose husband just died and she's hysteric. He said, it's always worked. He said, He said, okay, do it at 6 o'clock, the full dose, and 8 o'clock, full dose. We did that. Didn't work. So I called him again the next morning. And he says, I don't know. He says, they're really fractured. He said, just keep backing it up every 2 hours. It's not going to hurt. So we did 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Didn't work. We did 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock. That always worked. Always. We did it for about 6 months of patients coming in out of New York City and out of Washington, D.C. And finally, after that amount of time, we didn't have to do it. The only other time I've had to do that much was I had a lady, she was in her 30s, I believe. I don't think she was 40s, but she was a young lady. And she'd gone to a hospital to have an elective surgery done, and anesthesia made a mistake. And she had significant brain damage. And she couldn't sleep. And that's what it took to get her to sleep, was 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 8 o'clock. So if you have a person, you just want to plumb knock them out. It's worked on everybody I've used on. It's nasty tasting, and it's a little expensive. But for a person who can't sleep, they're willing to do anything for sleep. Another thing that can help a person fall asleep is a wet sheet pack. Anybody ever heard of a wet sheet pack? We use it on psych patients. On mental institutions, we'll use it on a psych patient that's out of control. So what you do is you take a sheet, fold it to the center, 2 people on each end, fold it to the center, fold it again to the center, fold it over, and then roll it up. Dab it down in ice cold water, real good. Partially squeeze it out, and then what you do is, if you put it on a bed, you need to put plastic on the bed. If you have a massage table, it'll work okay, but it's more dangerous on a massage table, and I'll explain. And then what you do is you take it and you take the tip of it and you roll it out real fast. Now if the person who's is helping you is the person you're going to use it on, they're going to be in their underwear. Everything else is gone. And you want to act fast once you roll it out. So you roll it out, and then that person and you grabs the center 2 outside pieces in the middle, and you work it just like you would a salvage cover. And you just go like this, and it opens up. That person jumps inside that thing, and then you put it over them, and then you tuck that under their arms, between their legs. It's everywhere touching. It's from here down, it is touching every piece of their skin. And then you put a sheet on them, blanket on them, but you have to stay with them. At first, it's very cold. But what happens when ice cold hits you? What does the body do? Sends blood. And then it's going to warm them up because all the blood flow going to it. And many times that person will go to sleep. But if they're on a massage table, even on a bed, anytime you have a person that is really tucked in good like that, where they can't move their legs good, but especially on a massage table, that person wakes up and it's dark or whatever, and they start to get up and they don't realize they're all tucked up, they can fall and break a hip, break a leg, break a shoulder, break their neck. So always stay with that person until they wake up if they're on a massage table, because you don't want them getting hurt. So a wet sheet pack can also be used for insomnia. Some people, like I said, will diffuse lavender or something like that to help calm them. Stress, we talked about that earlier today, so we won't go over the stress. Bleeding, someone talked about bleeding earlier today using cayenne pepper. Was that you? Who was it talked about using cayenne pepper for bleeding? Pardon? I don't know. Could have. Cayenne pepper works very good for bleeding. You can, in addition to direct pressure and elevation, cayenne pepper, comfrey root or leaf, European goldenrod, shade grass. Who uses essential oils? Anybody use essential oils? Have you used Melissa? No, I'm sorry, not Melissa. Yeah, it's expensive. It's another expensive, helichrysum. Helichrysum is excellent. It's another expensive one. Not as expensive as Melissa, I don't think. But you can put helichrysum on the wound that's bleeding and it will stop it from bleeding. But cayenne pepper is a whole lot cheaper. Works really good. There's all kinds of things you can use for it. But my favorite is cayenne pepper. Fibroids, bleeding fibroids, yarrow, red raspberry, shepherd's purse, lady's mantle, and crane's bill. My favorite for bleeding remember the lady with an issue of blood? My favorite is the shepherd's purse. Shepherd's purse works very, very well. Yes.
But just a question on that, and if you're bleeding in that way, if it's shedding, do you want to stop it?
If the person's been bleeding for say 30 days, 2 months, 3 months, yes. But that's a very good point that you bring. I don't like messing with that clock. That's it's a sensitive clock. I had a lady call one time and said her and her boyfriend were going over to Gatlinburg to spend the weekend, and she wanted something to stop the weekend. And I said, I didn't tell her she didn't need to be going with her boyfriend. That wasn't my business. But I told her, I'm not going to be messing with your clock. You just don't mess with it. But if a person has the problem of long term, then yes, that's what I use it for. But it works well. I had a girl call me one day. I was at church, one of my firefighters. Got out of church, called her back, and I said, what's going on? She says, I'm like that lady with the issue of blood in the Bible. She's a Baptist girl. And she said, I've been bleeding for over 30 days and I don't have any energy. None. I said, meet me at the office. And so on the way home, I stopped at the office and I gave her some shepherd's purse. And it's Sabbath, you just give people stuff. And I gave it to her and I said, and plus, friends, you help them anyway. And so I gave it to her and I told her how to use it. She called me the next day and she said, it stopped. It worked. So it works good. Nosebleed, raise the arm above the head. Cayenne dissolved in hot water or spray it up in your nose. Witch hazel. Did you ever take crushed ice and put it between the lip and the gum? They taught us that in school. And that can stop the bleeding nose. But spray some cayenne up in there. That will help to stop the bleeding. Don't stuff toilet paper up in there. You don't want to do that. Some people stuff toilet paper. You want it to bleed. You don't want to do that. Bleeding ulcers. I don't know why I didn't put cayenne. Cayenne is really good for ulcers. Whether it's ulcers in the stomach, ulcerative colitis, you can do as this, or you can take 2 capsules PRN, and it will stop the bleeding in the stomach or in the colon. Burns. There's different types of burns: heat burns, cold temperature burns, electrical burns, chemical burns, radiation burns, and friction burns. And I won't go into all these. They've even changed. They don't even call them first degree, second degree, third and fourth anymore. They got a different name for them. But let's talk about this. Cool the burn. When you get burned, we were taught that burning will continue for 12 hours. That's why when you get sunburned, it's around midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and you're on fire. Because it's going to keep burning, burning, burning. And so the first thing is cool the burn. Put it under, cool water and just keep cooling it and cooling it. Don't place ice directly on the burn. You can put it in ice water, but you don't that cold of water. But you have to be careful with too cold of water with too much of a burned area, or you can cause shock. Lavender essential oil is extremely good. The essential oil of lavender is extremely good for burns. I had this guy. He was a maintenance fella, and he went to work on a furnace. And he went and turned the gas valve off, and he went in and he turned on the light switch, and the light didn't come on. There's a little room, the furnace room. So he gets down and he pulls out his big lighter, click, and it burning from here up. Eyelashes, eyebrows, his hair, and his face was plumb burnt. And then he had stripes on his face, flame marks, kind of like a 1957 Chevy car, with those flames they paint on them. Well, he had flame marks on his face. And so they brought him in, and my grandmother had taught me to put grated up potatoes and aloe vera. So I took and poured a quart of aloe vera gel on his face. That's what I had at first at hand. That literally soaked up the whole quart. Soaked up the whole quart. And I had the ladies in dietary to grade some potatoes. So they brought the fresh potatoes down. And so we did the aloe vera, and then we put the taters on there, and then poured aloe vera in there, and then we went back and forth. And when it would get hot, I'd put more. Who's ever used vinegar for sunburns? Yeah, it's the best thing I found for sunburns. Take you some white vinegar, put you you need 2 bowls if you're burnt good, and you put in your washcloth in one of the bowls, and you apply it to the burnt area, and you keep, and your washcloth will get hot, and finally your vinegar is going to get hot, and then you take that bowl and put it in the freezer. Then you start on the next bowl, and you keep just applying it to the burnt area, keep applying it until you no longer get heat off of it. And then you put aloe vera on it. And then a couple hours later, 30 minutes later, you start getting hot again. Repeat it. Just keep doing it. So that's what we did. We treated him for 5 hours. We put a piece of aloe on his eye. We packed his face like a mummy, except put 2 little holes for him to breathe through the potatoes, for him to breathe. And then we taught his wife what to do, and he went home, and he had no scarring, none, no scarring at all. And one of our physicians said, Walt, if I had treated him that way in an emergency room with the supplies I have in the emergency room, he would have been scarred for life. And God's good. He's given us natural remedies that we can use to address things. And where did I learn this? My grandma. Just an old mountain remedy that she had taught me. Burdock, comfrey, colloidal silver. What does that remind you of? Who's ever used Cbd? Cbd is considered a medication. And back years ago, before Walter was even born, I was fighting a house fire, and I was a firefighter at that time on that department. And every time we'd move, I'd join another fire department. And I was fighting a house fire, and I leaned over, and some tar came off the roof of the house and went down my neck and burnt my neck really good. And for years, I had scars. And we didn't have hoods back then. You know, the Nomex hoods, we didn't have those. And so I went into work, and they put Cbd on it. And Cbd is a great product for burns. Colloidal silver do the same thing. It's the silver, and it works good. Calendula again, chickweed, bee propolis, goldenseal, marshmallow root. That's not marshmallows like you eat. It's marshmallow root. Cover the burn with a sterile dressing. Use something for pain, wild lettuce, California poppy. Watch for signs of infection. Do not use ice. Do not use ointments. Do you want to put Crisco shortening on it? One of the old remedies, put Crisco short. No, that holds the heat in. And do not break the blister for 2 reasons. Infection and pain. Is it going to be more painful if the blister comes off? It is. And so try not to break that blister. The biggest thing is you don't want the infection. Anyway. Elevate the burned parts of the body above the heart. Cover the burned area with cool, moist, sterile dressing, cloths, or towels. Oral care, mouth sores. Normally, a mouth sore is a stomach issue or a digestive issue. Stomach, colon, small intestines. Normally, that something's going on there with a mouth sore. Or have you ever seen a person that has a big old crack in their tongue, like a big old crater? It's usually a digestive issue. But you can put pine sap on the sore topically. Aloe vera can help. Goldenseal topically can help. Myrrh gum powder can help. Bee propolis activated charcoal can help. Have you ever had a mouth sore and put salt on it? That works good. Wet some salt and put on there. That can help. But also investigate the possibilities of digestive issues. Many times it's digestive issues. Gum disease. I talked about that lady earlier that we used the Goldenseal, the myrrh, and the bee propolis, the pine sap, and it was totally healed in 6 months. Goldenseal, myrrh gum powder, pine sap, bee propolis, black walnut, barberry, calendula, or comfrey. Those are good for gum disease. Toothaches, clove is probably the most popular. Who's used a clove on a toothache? Works really good. It does. Charcoal poultice can work, or a tablet. Goldenseal, myrrh gum powder, and horsetail. Those are all really good for tooth gum issues. Pine sap, calendula, chamomile, ginger, caraway. Salt water works good. There's a chemical reaction that's going on with salt water, and it helps with the pain. Who's done oil pulling? Oil pulling with my dentist highly recommends that for toothaches. And you take coconut oil, swish it for about 20 minutes, spit it out, but don't spit it in the sink. You can clog your sink up, your plumbing, spit it in a trash can or something, or go outside and spit it out. Strep throat. The best thing I found on strep throat is take a teaspoon of Goldenseal, a cup of water, make an infusion, and then what you're going to do is gargle with it for 2 minutes and swallow every 2 hours. So you're going to take a cup of water, a teaspoon of Goldenseal root powder, make an infusion where you just let it steep for 30 minutes, gargle for 2 minutes, then swallow every 2 hours. It works phenomenal on getting. Normally, strep is gone within less than 24 hours. It can go up as much as 48 hours, but normally within 12 to 24 hours, the strep is gone. Again, catch it in the incipient stage is you're always going to do best. Be careful with Goldenseal. Goldenseal is a tremendous product. It's one of my favorite. Internally, when you take it by mouth, Goldenseal, the rule of thumb is to use it, Goldenseal and Echinacea. Both Goldenseal and Echinacea can lose its potency long-term utilization. Just like if you took Cipro or vancomycin for a year, it's not going to work. It's going to quit working. So what you do is the rule of thumb is don't use either Goldenseal or Echinacea for more than 2 months. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Some people go as long as a month. Be careful though. 2 things about it. 1, it loses its efficacy. But number 2, it can cause some depression. Even though you are pulsing it, using it, don't use it. Use it, don't use it. You can get depression. Normally it's within 6 months, but I have seen people within a month and a half get suicidal. DC, stop the Goldenseal, and boom, the suicidal tendencies go away. So be careful long-term use of Goldenseal. Just keep an eye on it. Strep throat, colloidal silver, the Allison. Sore throats, lemon and honey, aloe vera, Goldenseal, propolis, salt water, colloidal silver, hydrotherapy, where you take ice water and dab you a handkerchief in it, where you fold it and put it around the neck, put a pin in it, and then put a sock around it. That works good. But my favorite for sore throat now is slippery elm. Slippery elm works very good for sore throats. Slippery elm is a food for the American Indians. When they would travel from village to village, if they didn't have food, they would bark the elm tree and eat the inner bark, that's slippery elm, and use that as food. If they didn't have food, they would eat the slippery elm for food. George Washington, when he was fighting the British, there's times he would run out of food with his men, and that's what they used for food. They would find elm trees. There wasn't any available trees, and they would make food out of the elm. And so, pardon?
Because it expanded inside them and made them feel full?
No, it's actually nutritious. Yes, actually nutritious. Yes. Yes.
Have you ever used burdock leaves
For what?
burdock leaves for sore throat?
No, does it work good?
I worked good for me.
Good. Did you use it as a tea? Or
I just went out and picked a piece and ate it.
Okay.
And so did my mom. I told her about it.
Right.
It was really well for her. And my cousin in Alaska was having some real trouble,
mm-hmm.
but they didn't have burdocks there. My
Mhm.
mom told them about it. And we don't have burdocks in Alaska. So she shipped some to them, and they made it in tea, and it worked for them.
Excellent. So those that are listening for sore throat, burdock tea, burdock leaf, either chew it up or make a tea instead of the burdock root for sore throat. It's good to know. There's just so much out there that we can learn. There is. Good. Oh, and if you use the slippery elm for a sore throat, what I'll do is put a teaspoon in their water, say it's in a water bottle, shake it up and sip on it, and it helps with that sore throat. Let's say a person has an endoscopy where they stick a tube down in the throat to look in their stomach, and it can kind of make them sore, and you can use that after and just have them sip on that, and it helps to heal the esophagus. But I like it for sore throats. Some people will take a charcoal tablet. Now, I don't like charcoal tablets that much because it takes more than 50% charcoal to make the tablet. It's got a binder. And so I like the charcoal, so I'll use a capsule or the powder. But for this issue, I like sucking. People can suck on a charcoal tablet, and that charcoal goes down, and that works good for a sore throat. Or they can put a charcoal peel against their tooth that's bothering them, and that can work. Well, y'all, I've gone over 2 minutes. It's 6:02. What do y'all want to do? Are y'all coming tomorrow? You coming tomorrow? No? Okay. Again, here's where you can get information. There's all kinds of stuff people put up, like where I don't know if do you put this up here? And so, okay. So when I go places, there's a lot of churches put up what I talk about. And so you'll find all kinds of stuff. And I forget sometimes, and so I say things I shouldn't. But you can go again to our webpage that Jess made for us. Go to themustardseed.us, Click on the home page. At the very middle of the bottom, it has YouTube channel. Click there, and it will take you to our YouTube channel. Or you can go to YouTube and put Lifestyle to Health, but that kind of takes a little while, and so it works better going there. Also, on Wednesday mornings. Do any of y'all watch me on Wednesday mornings? Anybody here watch me on Wednesday? Okay. Wednesday mornings at 7:45 approximately, unless I have a fire call or something happens. I'm usually there. That's Eastern time. Y'all Eastern, right? And so you can go to the mustard seed, or I'm wrong. Mustard seed TN. Mustard seed TN on Facebook, or you can come to mine, Walt Cross, on Facebook. Now I'll stream live on Mustard Seed TN, and then I'll share it over to mine a little bit after 8 o'clock. But
I have our church sometimes, our Facebook page will get time.
oh, okay. So you share it on there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Share it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But if you don't get Facebook, where do I find it?
You won't, I don't think. No.
But you get the YouTube channel.
But you can go and find YouTube stuff.
The mustardseed.us.
Themustardseed.us. Yes. Now, I'm wanting to do more and more. Like, you can kind of see that there's a lot of stuff I'd like to do, and I just don't have time to do it. But I want to be able to do more, and part of it is my knowledge base. And that is, I don't know how to shoot and edit. That's on my to-do list, is learn how to edit, and I'll be putting even more. So all of those that I do, see, the complaint I got, the ones I did for Amazing Discoveries, like this or whatever, they're long. I mean, and people, if they've got a brown recluse bite, they don't have time to watch through a 2.5-hour DVD or on the internet to try to find where it is. They want it now. And so what I want to be able to do is just to put individually all these kind of things up where people can go and, what I do for Nosebleed or what I do for that. The challenge is my knowledge of being able to marry the sound so it has good sound and edit it and whatever. Okay, yes, exactly. I'd like to do them for 5 minutes. 5 to 7 minutes seems to be where you keep people. You start losing them around 7 minutes. So I'd like to do that. It's just my knowledge base. So I'm trying.
You're right. A lot of people, one of the biggest complaints is I don't want to hear the history. I don't want to hear your story.
Tell me what to do.
Get what I need. You can get out.
That's right.
That's very appealing.
And see, it's very difficult for me because the way I think, I need information to make a decision. So I think, well, I need to give that to give a person enough information to make an informed decision to do it. But Mary Lou says, just tell people what they need to do. That's all they want to know.
Exactly. She's right.
Yep. Okay. Well, y'all, let's have a word of prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this time we've had here, and we ask that you will bless. Give us that thirst and that hunger to learn medical missionary work. Give us that desire to help other folks, and not just be selfish and use it for ourselves, but to be able to help those that we come in contact with. And then to be able to let them know it wasn't the charcoal, it wasn't the Goldenseal, and it wasn't us, it was you that did it. Lord, help us to be able to understand how to do it and feel confident in being able to do that. Lord, we ask as we head on home, keep us safe tonight from the wind. Give us the safety as we go home. Send your angels before us. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.